battling to keep Iraq from breaking point. But are Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki's sectarian policies at the heart of the turmoil? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Adrian Finighan. A flood of Shia volunteers is signing up to join security forces in Iraq to take on Sunni rebel groups who've captured large swathes of territory north of Baghdad. It's giving the sectarian dimension to the ongoing turmoil an added edge. Civilians are answering a call to arms from Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki and Iraq's most senior Shia cleric. It follows sweeping gains made by fighters from the Al-Qaeda splinter group, the Islamic State of Iraq, and the Levant, or ISIL, and other disaffected Sunnis. But are Maliki's sectarian-based domestic policies fueling the unrest? Al Jazeera's Imran Khan in Baghdad helps set up a discussion.
Long before this latest crisis, Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki was accused of being sectarian, of not reaching out to both Sunni and Shia partners within his own government and within Iraqi society generally. Now, Osama al-Najafi, who is the Speaker of the House after the elections, said he could not support a third term for Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki because he wasn't able to reach out to the Sunnis. Now, that was crucial. After this latest crisis, that criticism has been ratcheted up. Saleh al-Mutlaq and other senior politicians have said that this crisis is absolutely the fault of Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. Now, we're also hearing from the Association of Muslim Scholars. That's a key and very big religious group in this country. They are very powerful. They do hold sway over a lot of the Sunni community here. What they've said is the Sunni rebels are allowed to march on Baghdad and affect regime change in this country because of Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki's sectarian policies. Now, for the government's part, Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki has said that he has tried to reach out to the Sunnis, but they've stopped him and blocked him at every single ford, that he's been forced into the kind of crisis that he's in right now because he simply hasn't had the cooperation from all of the parties that he needs to be able to bring about this latest crisis to a peaceful close. That doesn't really play with neither the Sunnis or the Kurds, who are squarely blaming him for where we are right now here in Iraq.
So can Nouri al-Maliki unite Iraq, or is there a real risk the country could split into separate autonomous regions? Let's get the thoughts of our guests for today. With me here in Doha is Lara Fatah. Joining us from Erbil in the Kurdish region of Iraq is Alaa Makki, an MP with the Wataniya alliance. And from London, we're joined by Sabah al-Mukhtar, president of the Arab Lawyers Association, which has acted for the Iraqi government. Alaa Makki, if we can start with you. To what extent, then, is Nouri al-Maliki responsible, to blame for what's happening in Iraq right now?
Well, it's now this catastrophe which are living in. It is not to blame certain person. Nouri al-Maliki is not a person. He is a phenomena. The ghost of dictatorship, the marginalization of others, Sunni, Shia, Kurd, only the Al-Dawah party, even Al-Dawah party leadership is marginalized by his person and his relatives. So it is not to measure the extent how much Nouri al-Maliki is blamed. He's blamed altogether. But we need to see a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, we have to do something. Iraq is burning. I'm talking from Iraq, not from outside. So we need urgent crisis management. And I think the volunteers, based on the call or al-Marji'iyya fatwa, is a dangerous phenomena because they are defending the Shia, which is wrong. We have to say we are Iraqis and we should defend Iraq, not only Shia. We should recruit the Sunni, the Shia, all the blocs to save Iraq. This is from one side. From the other side, let's go to the possible solutions in front of us. That's to try to find out the sort of agreement on formation of a power-sharing government.
Okay.
As Nouri al-Maliki is expired altogether. I mean, he has no ability to manage the country. So we should, the political forces, we should talk to each other urgently.
We'll explore some of the solutions a little later in our discussion. I just want to get to the nub of this, to explore this point about Nouri al-Maliki before we go anywhere. Sabah al-Mukhtar, has al-Maliki's marginalisation of Sunnis, his refusal over many years to strike a political accord with them, brought the country to this breaking point?
Most certainly so, but it's all very well we accuse Maliki. Maliki didn't come from the moon. He was imposed by the Americans and the British, who have appointed a government with a constitution that is sectarian based, that is creating the problem. They have backed this government despite the fact that it's for the last 2 terms he has served, and the previous governments have been abusing the rights of the Iraqis. Generally speaking, the Shias were suffering under that government, the Sunnis were suffering, the Kurds were suffering. The abuse of human rights, the corruption that existed in the country, all these factors have been the hallmark of this government, of Maliki's government. Of course, he does take the blame, and I think the only solution for any way out of Iraq is that, in the first instance, Maliki as a person must be removed of the picture, because he is the person who is responsible for all the present situation, despite the fact that he was put there by the Americans and the British. I think the Iraqis need to find a solution without Maliki, and then they have to look at the possibility of dealing with the various factions and various policies of various sectors, but certainly Maliki must go out. And I think there is an intention, there is an understanding now in the West that they can no longer back this losing horse. Probably Iran is still finding somebody to back, but I think the Western policies and the rest of the world are beginning to understand that he must go.
All right, Lara Fatah, do you agree with that? Is Maliki to blame for this? Are we witnessing, in your opinion, the disintegration of the state of Iraq? Is the country descending into civil war?
I don't know if it's descending into civil war, but it's not in a good place at the moment. Maliki is one of the reasons why the country is in this state, but he's not the only reason. I don't know that any of the parties in Iraq could say that there has been a genuine political will towards compromise. If Iraq is to survive, to stabilize its peace, there has to be compromise from all sections. One of the problems with al-Maliki is he breaks his promises. The last 4 years, he has not fulfilled any of the mandates of the Erbil agreement made to make him into government in the last election. So the problem is the broken promises, the lack of trust, and all the parties and political entities in Iraq need to show a will to compromise in order to bring the situation under control. You
live and work in the Kurdish north. What are the chances, do you think, of Mr. al-Maliki trying to form a coalition government with the Kurds to jointly fight this rebellion? And what concessions do you think the Kurds would want from Maliki in order to do that?
Well, in the past few governments, the Kurds have been the kingmakers. They have worked with Maliki, but he has to put something on the table, and he has to also actually come through on the promises this time. Whether the KRG wants another 4 years of inaction, there's very little progress between the relations between KRG and Baghdad in the last 4 years. They're at a stalemate over oil, over territories. There's no resolution over the disputed territories. So if there is a genuine will to move forward, then maybe the KRG might consider it. But I think there has to be a genuine will behind the approach.
Alaa Makki, I want to pick up on that point about Maliki. Perhaps it's time for him to go. Is he, do you think, the man to end this crisis, or will the country's sectarian problems not even begin to dissipate until such time as al-Maliki is not in power?
Well, before I answer your question or comment, I want to add to my colleague in London. Well, it's not only UK and the United States. It's Turkey and Iran also have to be blamed for a certain extent of Al-Maliki being in power. So back to your comment. Now Al-Maliki really, I think, is having no power. Al-Maliki is now a symbol because the Iraqi army has melted away. And that's been indicated by Al-Maliki and Marja'iyya and others, and the Minister of Interior are calling the people to recruit and to be volunteers to defend Baghdad. That means there's no army, no armed forces, organized armed forces. So really, the most important issue now is the interference of the neighboring countries. And we as Iraqis, me personally, we don't want any neighboring country to interfere anymore in our internal issue. We are brothers. We are Iraqi people. So Shia, Sunni, Kurd, we are Iraqis. If the people left us alone, we can manage ourselves. But on the other hand, now it's wrong to say Daesh to describe all the revolutionists.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
It's a revolution shared by Iraqi people.
Look, I'm sorry to interrupt you. So you
Yes.
say that we should stop Al-Qaeda interfering in Iraq's affairs, but Iraq's army melted away just days ago. That didn't put up any fight at all.
Yes, Iraqi army has went away, okay, but it's now the revolutionists people are a mixture of marginalized Iraqis, old Iraqi officers of the old Iraqi army, a lot of people, tribes leaders. So here we have a mixture. Maybe part of them is Al-Qaeda. We should surround this Al-Qaeda. We should try to make a sort of connection with the people who are now present in Mosul and TIKRIT, and in order to reach to them, to seize fire and to sit on the table and to really surround Al-Qaeda effect. It is not the killing of Shia or Sunni will solve the solution.
Sabah al-Mukhtar, do you agree with that? Can Iraq manage itself without any outside intervention?
Well, in the first instance, I think the description that what's happening is Al-Qaeda activity is really a disinformation exercise, because what's happened is that the military councils of Iraq, they are not Qaeda. There are, of course, elements of Qaeda, and there are criminals and other terrorist organizations there. But this is an uprising of the Iraqi people against the abuse which has been taking place by Maliki. The solution is for the Iraqis. I think what we need is, number one, is that the external powers, whether it's the Western powers or the neighbors, not to interfere, not to impose governments on Iraq. I think we, the Iraqis, need to get rid of Maliki and try and begin to talk to each other. I think there must be, for a change from 2003 until now, the West has been taking position against the Iraqi resistance to the occupation, to Maliki, and to the sectarian policy which was imposed by Bremer, his constitution, and the occupation of Iraq. I think the Iraqis are capable. It's a very difficult thing, because it's difficult for people to be able to deal with the Ba'athists, who they assume that they accuse them of having committed crimes. It's difficult also for the others to deal with those who have committed crimes over the last 10 years by using drills, torture, abuse, and the rest of it. But nevertheless, this is a solution which cannot be imposed from the outside. It is a solution which only the Iraqis can do, but the outside can certainly help by, number one, not aligning themselves with somebody or another. Secondly, is trying to assist the Iraqis to reach this solution, which unfortunately has not been the case over the last 10 years. The West has been interfering, the neighbors have been interfering, and at the end of the day, we all know in previous elections where the Americans were leaning on the governments, where the Iranians were leaning on the government, where we had to choose between one person or another who is acceptable to the Iranians and the Americans at the same time. I think it's about time that this should end. And I think there is a beginning of a realization on the international scene that it must be done.
All right. Well, Prime Minister NOURI al-Maliki has asked for military aid from the United States, from helicopters to airstrikes, to push back rebel advances. But US President Barack Obama is adamant that it's a two-way street.
Unfortunately, Iraqi's leaders have been unable to overcome too often the mistrust and sectarian differences that have long been simmering there. And that's created vulnerabilities within the Iraqi government as well as their security forces. So any action that we may take to provide assistance to Iraqi security forces has to be joined by a serious and sincere effort by Iraq's leaders to set aside sectarian differences, to promote stability and account for the legitimate interests of all of Iraq's communities, and to continue to build the capacity of an effective security force. We can't do it for them.
But Sunni leaders say that Maliki has refused opportunities to make political concessions. A series of protests spread across Sunni areas of Iraq in late 2012, far bigger than anything seen since 2003. But the government responded with force rather than dialogue. In late December, bulldozers demolished an encampment in the city of Ramadi, and months later, special forces gunned down 44 protesters at a camp in Hawija in Kirkuk province. Lara Fatah, what are the US's responsibilities here? Can the US help al-Maliki if, as I think we all agree here, or at least the three of you do, that Maliki is the problem?
He's the problem, but if you take away Maliki, also who comes next could be another problem. You know, at the moment, I'd like to know who people might suggest as a credible replacement, somebody who is open to compromise, to actively working with all the ethnic groups within Iraq. As to whether America can help him if he's the problem, it really depends on if Maliki's prepared to change the way he operates, to demonstrate that he can change. Whether that's possible or not is another question, and whether the Americans want to fully engage is also another question. You know, they've offered airstrikes at the moment, and that's it really. Okay,
Sabah al-Mukhtar, can the US help the Iraqi government without fueling further authoritarianism and sectarianism from its Prime Minister?
Well, there are a number of issues. Some of them are domestic with the USA. President Obama is facing trouble within the USA. He is unlikely to be able to take action in Iraq. Secondly, if he does take action in Iraq, he will be asked, why is he not taking the same action against Daesh and what have you in Syria? So this is the USA. I think on the other hand, I think Maliki is an expired person. He's been given more than one opportunity, including the last election in 2011, when the USA backed him instead of Ayad Alawi. So I think they've given up on him. I don't think he is a reformed or a person who can be reformed. His policies are very wrong. He is backed by Iran. He is implementing the Iranian policy. He is acting in a sectarian way. As far as a replacement for Maliki, I think it doesn't have to be any of the names we know. There are a number of names which have all been, almost all of them, has been discredited because they've been part of the so-called political process, which has been linked to the external interest rather than the national Iraqi interest. So I think there could be the possibility of finding people to replace that one. I think the only requirement, there are two prerequisites. One is that the person who should do the job, or the people who should do the job, should be coming from a national point of view rather than the interest of neighbors, whether they are Iran or Saudi Arabia or America or Turkey or whatever. And the second thing is that it must be seen that there is no external interference into the Iraqi affairs, because this is the cause of the problem from 2003 until now. It's been the outsiders who were dictating on the Iraqis what to do by backing one person or being against the other.
Alaa Makki, the Prime Minister is asking Parliament to pass measures that would give him greater powers. If Maliki is the problem, how do you get rid of him?
In fact, Maliki is already having all the power with his right hand, not even the left hand. He is the Minister of Defense, Minister of Interior, Minister of Intelligence, Minister of Internal Security, and he's the Prime Minister, and he's the General Commander of the Army. I don't know what's left not to control the security. So what will be the emergency law? He can now arrest anybody outside the legislation, outside the legal ways. So when we sat on last Thursday in the Parliament, we found ourselves unable to give him the authorization to have emergency state and to be the only man governing Iraq, because he's already failed altogether. So it is not relevant, and I think we need now to be realistic, and we have short-term actions and crisis management, and we have to have long-term management. My colleagues describe, I think, the long-term management, strategic change, constitution, and the change of the regime, all the bad, the dirty politics, and the wrong politics which is present now. So we need now strategically to change this, yes, but we need to solve the current situation. So we should prepare urgent alternative and who is convenient to the circumstances now, because there's no army. So if we bring somebody, how he will put his power? If we bring somebody, how will we behave? Have he relations with Iran, Turkey, United States, UK, European Union, all those countries, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf, Jordan? So we have to have joint work now urgently as an emergency treatment. Later on, we put on power sharing government, and we put on all the strategic guidelines to solve the solution.
Okay, Sabah,
the situation.
Sabah Mukhtar, I want to get your thoughts on what you've just heard there, and tell me where you see this crisis ending right now. Will the Iraqi government, as it stands, be able to put down this rebellion, or do you think the country is heading for disintegration? Is it heading for civil war even?
Most certainly, I don't think the government is able to put down the uprising. I don't think the country is heading for division yet. I think the solution is that there must be some sort of a national conciliation whereby all the various factions of the Iraqis, you cannot no longer exclude people. You cannot continue the policy of the ijtithath of whether it's the Ba'athists or the Shiites or the Sunnis or the whoever they are, unless there is some sort of a national reconciliation government which the community, the world community, the United Nations, the League of Arab States, indeed even the neighbors and the Europeans can assist, but not to interfere, not to impose on the Iraqis who they want, who they don't, who they shouldn't have. But I think they should assist them in setting up this national reconciliation whereby all the factions who have been so far at each other's throat must sit down together, because that's their country. They are the people of the country. The idea that somehow those are acceptable and those are not is no longer possible. And I think that is the only forward way. There is obviously the situation that where Iraq could become into a stalemate situation, i.e. you have the north and the west outside the control of the government. The government is only in Baghdad, and the south having a different situation.
Lara Fatah, what do you think of that? How would people in the north of the country, where you're from, view that idea of national reconciliation? Do you think that they would want to be part of a new united Iraq, or to break away?
It depends. I mean, what people on the street would like is very different from maybe what the geopolitical realities will allow to happen. If there is a genuine move to reconciliation where past wrongs are genuinely recognized and understood, and the fears that those can bring in. I mean, the current thing with ISIL in Mosul is that they're bringing in former Ba'athist generals. Obviously, that's a big fear for the Kurds, because there was a genocide against the Kurds in the 80s by these officers. So there has to be a genuine move, if that is the case, towards reconciliation, where the faults of what happened in the past are acknowledged, not brushed under the carpet like in 2003, genuinely acknowledged, talked about, understood, and to move past it. But without that frankness, it can't happen.
Okay, I'm afraid we're out of time. Lara Fatah here in Doha, Alaa Makki in Erbil, and Sabah Mukhtar in London. Many thanks indeed for being with us on this Inside Story. Don't forget you can add your voice to this discussion online at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or you can tweet us at AJ Inside Story on Twitter. In Doha, I'm Adrian Finighan. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again. Bye for now.